Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ank's English, where we talk about everything related to learning English in fun and engaging ways. I'm Ank, and today we're diving into a very important topic, listening skills. How many of you have struggled with understanding spoken English? You're not alone. In today's video, we'll talk about why listening can be a challenge and how you can improve it in a way that feels natural and enjoyable. If you've ever felt frustrated trying to catch every word in a conversation or a podcast, this video is for you. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our future videos. Now, let's get started and make listening in English easier and more fun.
Okay, so let's get real for a moment. Who here has tried to listen to an English podcast or watch a movie and just felt like you were completely lost? Like words are coming at you so fast that it's hard to even catch a breath, right?
Absolutely. I remember the first time I tried listening to an English podcast. The host was speaking at lightning speed, and I felt like the words were just floating over my head. I could catch a few words here and there, but the rest was like a blur. It was frustrating because I knew I wasn't understanding the key details, but I couldn't figure out what I was missing.
Yes, that exact feeling. And it's not just podcasts. Even movies or TV shows in English can be so fast and packed with slang. I've watched entire episodes of shows and didn't really understand what was happening until I watched it the second or third time.
And that's the thing with listening, right? It feels like you're not getting any better, even though you're working hard at it. But here's the truth. It's not that you're bad at listening. It's just that listening is a skill. And like any skill, it takes time to develop. And even if you're an advanced English learner, it can still be tough.
When I first started learning English, I thought listening would be the easiest part. After all, speaking is challenging because you have to produce words. But listening, it seemed like you just absorbed them, right? But then, I started listening to native speakers, and I realized it's way more complex than that.
Exactly. The speed at which native speakers talk is one thing, but there's also the challenge of accent, slang, and colloquial expressions. What really threw me off was the fact that native speakers often don't enunciate every word. They blend words together, and sometimes the words they use don't match the textbook English I was studying.
And that's exactly it. Native speakers have a rhythm when they talk. They may drop the "gi" at the end of going, so it sounds like going. Or they might say "want to" instead of "want to." It's all part of how they speak naturally. But when you're learning English, it can feel like a completely different language. The same thing happens with contractions too. For example, "I'm going to" becomes "I'm gonna."
Yes, and it can get even more complicated when you add in regional accents or dialects. For example, people from different parts of the UK, the US, or Australia might pronounce the same word in totally different ways. A word like schedule is pronounced schedule in the UK, but schedule in the US.
And that's one of the reasons why learning to listen in English takes so much practice. It's not just about hearing the words. It's about understanding the context in which those words are used and recognizing patterns in the way they are spoken. It's like learning to understand a new form of communication.
Absolutely. And once you understand this, it makes things a little less overwhelming. Instead of trying to catch every single word, you start to focus on the bigger picture. You pick up on cues like the speaker's tone, their rhythm, and even their body language. If you're watching a video or a movie.
And here's another thing to remember. It's okay to not understand everything immediately. When you're learning a new language, it's completely normal to miss things. The important part is not to get discouraged. Even if you miss a few words or sentences, you're still building your skills. Over time, you'll notice that things that were once difficult will start becoming easier to understand.
Now that we've tackled why listening can feel like a challenge, let's dive into one of the key strategies to overcome this obstacle, focusing on context.
One of the biggest game changers for me was realizing the importance of context in listening. When I first started, I was obsessed with trying to understand every single word. But the more I practiced, the more I realized it's not about understanding every word. It's about understanding the overall message.
Exactly. Context gives you clues about what's happening in the conversation. For example, if you're listening to a story about someone's day at the beach and they say, "I went surfing," you can pretty much guess what they're talking about, even if you don't understand every detail of that sentence.
Right. And the more you understand the topic, the easier it becomes to fill in the gaps. I used to listen to podcasts about travel because I love the subject. Even if I didn't catch every single word, I could guess what was being talked about because I knew the general topic and context.
And it's not just about the subject. It's about listening to the flow of the conversation, understanding the speaker's emotions, and the overall tone. If someone's excited, you know they're probably talking about something positive. If they're speaking slowly and softly, maybe they're discussing something serious.
Exactly. The cool thing about focusing on context is that it takes away the pressure of having to understand every single word. You don't need to know every detail to get the big picture. Let's think of it like watching a mystery movie. You don't need to know every single conversation to figure out who the criminal is. Just understanding the main points will help you get to the conclusion.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And you can apply the same principle when you're listening in English. If you understand the theme of what's being said, then you can guess the meaning of the unknown words based on the situation. This is why it's so important to listen to topics you're familiar with. It reduces the mental load of constantly trying to decode everything.
Exactly. And one thing I learned along the way is that you don't need to be afraid of missing a few words. Native speakers often use fillers like like, and so. So don't panic if you miss a word here and there. Just listen for the key phrases and trust your ear to catch the flow of the conversation.
Totally. I used to get frustrated when I couldn't catch everything. But I've realized it's much more effective to listen with the mindset that it's okay to miss out on some words. As long as you get the essence of the conversation, you're doing great. Plus, you'll pick up more and more as you keep listening.
And don't forget that context doesn't just help with understanding individual conversations, but also helps when you're practicing different accents. For instance, when I listen to American podcasts, I know that certain slang words or phrases might be used differently than in British English. Understanding the context of the situation helps me adapt to different regional differences.
Exactly. And that's another thing that keeps improving your listening skills. The more you get used to hearing different accents and expressions in various contexts, the more comfortable you'll become. It's all about practicing consistently and getting familiar with the diverse ways English can be spoken.
Alright, so we've talked about how important context is, but here's the thing. Even if you understand the context, it takes a lot of practice to get used to how words are pronounced, the speed of speech, and the rhythm of sentences. This brings us to the next big point: repetition and practice.
Oh, this is the golden rule. Honestly, it's the key to improving anything in language learning, especially listening. You can't just listen to something once and expect to understand everything. I had to listen to the same podcast episode like 5 or 6 times before I really understood what was going on.
Totally. And it's not just about repetition in terms of quantity. It's about intentional repetition. Every time you listen to the same thing, you pick up on something new. You might notice a word you missed the first time, or a particular pronunciation that becomes clearer. The more you expose yourself to the same content, the easier it gets.
Exactly. And I know some people get frustrated thinking that listening to something again is wasting time, but in reality, it's actually making the content stick. Your brain needs that time to process and internalize the information. After a few repetitions, I bet you'll find that the next time you hear a similar conversation, you'll understand it much better.
Yes. And I noticed something interesting. The more I listened to the same content, the more comfortable I became with predicting what might come next. For example, if I was listening to a dialogue, I could guess what the speaker would say next based on the tone or the flow of the conversation. It felt like I was finally catching up with the rhythm of natural speech.
That's such a great point, and the best part? As you get more familiar with the material, your listening will become faster and more efficient. You'll start to understand things that you would have missed before, and you'll have more confidence in your abilities.
And it's not just podcasts or TV shows either. Even if you're listening to simple conversations, practice makes perfect. Start with things that feel a little too easy, then challenge yourself with harder material. The more you push your listening ability, the more you grow.
Now, let's talk about something that completely changed my listening skills. Active listening. This is a game changer, especially when you're listening to something difficult, like fast-paced conversations or complex topics.
Active listening means being fully engaged with what you're hearing, rather than just passively letting the words go in one ear and out the other. I know I used to be guilty of this. I'd have a podcast on in the background while I was doing something else, and then wonder why I wasn't improving.
I did the same thing, and I realized that's not really listening. Active listening involves concentrating on the words, understanding the structure of the conversation, and really thinking about the meaning of what's being said. It's a different level of focus.
Exactly. When I started to actively listen, I would take notes or pause the podcast to repeat a sentence. I would even try to mimic the pronunciation and intonation of the speakers. It was hard at first, but now I feel much more connected to the material.
One trick I love is to visualize what the speaker is talking about. If they're telling a story, I picture the scene in my mind. This helps me grasp the meaning much faster, and I feel like I'm really in the conversation.
And let's not forget the importance of reflecting on what you've listened to. After you finish an episode or a conversation, take a moment to think about what you learned. What new words did you hear? What phrases or expressions were used? Reflecting will not only reinforce what you've learned, but also help you connect the dots between words and their meanings.
So now, let's get into something fun. Technology can be a huge ally in your listening practice. We all know there are tons of apps and websites out there for language learning, but have you ever really utilized them to improve your listening?
I love this part. I used to rely on traditional textbooks in classes, but once I started using apps like Anchor for flashcards or Spotify for podcasts, my listening skills really took off.
Yeah, the beauty of technology is that it's personalized. You can listen to podcasts that match your level, or watch videos on YouTube that explain difficult concepts. And you can use subtitles. In the beginning, don't be afraid to watch with subtitles, but challenge yourself to turn them off as you get better.
Totally. And apps like Speechling or Italki allow you to practice with real-life conversations. You can even record yourself speaking and compare it to native speakers. This helps build confidence and improve your listening and speaking together.
Let's talk about plateaus because they happen to all of us. You know when you feel like you've been practicing for a while, but you're just not improving anymore?
Ugh, the dreaded plateau. It's frustrating, but I've learned that it's totally normal. The key is to keep practicing, keep challenging yourself, and switch up your routine. Try listening to a different kind of content or switch accents. Sometimes, a change in perspective can jumpstart your progress.
Exactly. And remember, patience is key. Even when it feels like you're stuck, you're still improving in ways that might not be obvious at first. Keep going, and soon enough, you'll see the results.
Well, that's all for today. I hope these tips and strategies help you with your English listening practice. Remember, listening isn't about getting everything right all the time. It's about understanding the big picture, staying consistent, and having fun with it. If you liked this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more tips and tricks. Keep listening, keep practicing, and as always, keep improving. See you in the next video.